Adam, how's it going, my man?
Good yourself?
Doing very good. Did a morning of yoga classes and yeah, looking forward to this, looking forward to the weekend. How about yourself?
Yeah, yeah, sort of the same. Just chilling, man. Just the weekend now, so nothing too exciting on the horizon. How was yoga?
Yoga was good. So we're still doing the classes via stream.
Yep.
So everybody's at home. So there's like, a dozen or so people in each of the classes just, yeah, setting up little heaters in their garage and in their living rooms. It got cold in Brisbane all of a sudden, like pretty much overnight. So people were a bit soft here over in Brisbane when it comes to cold weather.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you've been pretty much doing that since COVID started then? Just online through Zoom?
Yeah, we immediately pivoted from, running almost 30 yoga classes a week via Zoom. Sorry, running almost 30 classes a week in the studio to, we had no interruption of classes. So it was like a lot of hard work to get everything set up that
That's amazing.
we pulled it off. We pulled it off somehow.
That's
Yeah.
really good. Hey,
So
I think
like,
a lot of businesses sort of suffered because they didn't sort of make the move fast enough and adapt, whereas people that have been able to adapt and flex their model into the right sort of pivot have done like reasonably well out of it all.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, along with pivoting to online, we had to do like a massive cut down of our expenses to make it worth it. Otherwise, it would have been better to just stay closed. But yeah, somehow we pulled it off.
No, well done. That's awesome. So tell me about your studio then. How long have you been in business for, and what do you guys what sort of yoga do you do there? Like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So Flex Hot Yoga in Brisbane, we've been here for 8.5 years. And I really believe instead of doing a lot of different styles of yoga, we just do two. So we do a strong class and we do a soft class. The strong class is called Power Vinyasa, and it is heated to about 32 degrees Celsius. And that way we can cook the body a little bit into more flexibility, more mobility. It's also good for the joints. Just like any exercise, you'll warm up before the exercise. So the heat of the yoga class means that you're sufficiently warm, you're more elastic because of the heat, and then you've got all the cleansing benefits of the good sweat as well.
Yeah, awesome. So about 8.5 years, did you say?
What's that?
About 8.5 years, is that right? You said?
Yeah, 8.5 years with the yoga studio.
Yep.
And I've been teaching probably for about 12 or 13 years now.
Yep.
Actually, around the same time that I started Jiu-Jitsu, started teaching yoga.
Yep. So how did you get sort of started in Jiu-Jitsu? What was the sort of path there that led you into that?
To be honest, I think the main benefit for Jiu-Jitsu for me is the confidence. I had a little bit of a rough upbringing where I was bullied a lot, and growing up in the mean streets of Melbourne wasn't fun at the time, being quite a small kid.
Yeah.
So I guess to develop the skill set and the confidence that, martial arts in general and Jiu-Jitsu has given me has just, like, as an adult, I'm a lot more self-assured.
Yeah.
And yeah. That's sort of what got me going. My dad is a karate black belt, and when I was a kid, I used to watch him compete, mostly in kata demonstrations. So the martial art forms, he did that more than fighting competitors in competition, and he did really well in these competitions. So there was always that, I guess, that male role model of the martial arts. I didn't grow up with my father, but when I'd see him, he'd train me in a little bit of karate. So I always had that curiosity, that inquisitiveness to train the martial arts. But it wasn't until I was 23 where I found Jiu-Jitsu. 36 now.
Yeah.
And so one of my best friends, Vijay, he showed me UFC. I'm sure, like, maybe yourself and many people have a similar experience of being shown the early UFCs and seeing style against style and the small guy beating up the big guy. And what mentally attracted me to jiu-jitsu was that a smaller opponent can throw around a bigger opponent and you can actually fight off your back. I just found that really interesting. The whole concept of guard and being able to fight from your back and break someone's joints or turn them over or get a stranglehold, just found very, very enticing. How I actually found jiu-jitsu is an interesting story for me. I was walking around in Coorparoo, actually Woolloongabba in Brisbane. It's right next to the Gabba Stadium. And you know those community notice boards where people, like, they stick up their
like a pin-up board.
Yeah, pin-up board.
Yeah.
So I was walking past the pin-up board and I saw, literally in that moment, I was thinking about jiu-jitsu and I saw this. It had been raining the last few days. So this weathered A4 piece of paper, they hadn't put it in any sort of plastic sleeve or anything like that. And it said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there was a cartoon sketch of two people rolling, and it gave the address, and it said, beginners welcome. And it was like extremely surprising for me in the moment to see this sign, what I literally took as a sign. So I called up the place straight away and they said, we're closed right now over Christmas, but our first class is back on the 7th of January, 2007. And I said, I'll be there. So I went and did my first class with, I believe it was Queensland's first black belt, Darren McKean, who is a black belt under Peter Devine, who moved to Brisbane. His day job is as an accountant, and then he would come and teach jiu-jitsu in the evenings, and immediately fell in love with jiu-jitsu 13 years ago. And I knew from that very first class that this is a martial art for me. I'm going to be passionate about this for the rest of my life. One day I'll be a black belt. Like I literally knew in that very first class, like this is for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. So where do you train now?
I train at Southside BJJ in Springwood. So we have a few branches. I train under Paul Stolya, the big Russian dude, who, rips havoc in the competitions and is a really wonderful coach and a friend as well. And very happy with training.
That's awesome.
There's a couple of black belts in the gym and just really good stable of people. There's usually about 30 or 40 people on the mats every night. So a lot
That's
of people
handy, yeah.
Yeah.
I was chatting to one of my students, Lance, who I obviously had on the podcast for the first episode. He actually was speaking about you. You guys know each other from his time in Queensland, and so you met him through jiu-jitsu, is that right?
Yeah, we're friends. So we used to hang out, and he had come to the yoga studio. Met through jiu-jitsu. I think he went more in the direction of wrestling and MMA than jiu-jitsu. Yeah, speak from time to time. He's a good dude. You're lucky to have him over there in Perth.
Yeah. He's an awesome guy. Yeah, I've known him for quite a long time as well. He trains at my academy now, my jiu-jitsu academy, and he's doing quite well. So we're looking at that purple belt pretty soon. So he's doing well.
That's good to hear. Long time on his blue.
Yeah, really long time. He's been training, I don't know how long. I think he was a blue belt when I was a blue belt, possibly, which is quite a while ago now. So he's been at it for a while. But he's wrestling, obviously, the time he spent wrestling is benefiting quite a lot for his no-gi. Obviously, just really sharp on his feet and scrambling's really smooth. So he's got that advantage, I guess, over most, run-of-the-mill blue belts. He's quite an adept wrestler. So, yeah.
World's longest blue belt.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best as well.
Yeah. That's the thing. Hey, if you stay blue belt long enough, you end up being sort of a bit of a terror on the competition scene. He competed last year and did pretty well, got quite a few good takedowns and guillotines and stuff. So I think he's nearly ready for purple. So we'll hold him a little bit longer and see how he goes in comp coming up, and then hopefully he'll push through. Yeah. So he told me you left school and joined an ashram when you were, I think, like school age, the end of school, sort of year 10, 11, something like that. Is that right?
That is right. So when I was 14 years old, I got quite spiritually inquisitive. And to be honest, it was from a place of suffering. I didn't enjoy school. I didn't enjoy my home environment. And so I was looking for an alternative, but, and then there was the curiosity for knowledge as well. Okay, can I get answers beyond, what I'm experiencing in everyday life at school and at home? So then I started to pick up some philosophy books and hang out in temples. So I'd go to like Hare Krishna temple, I'd go to this Buddhist house, I'd go to church as well, just to see what was there. And my mum would take me to this community farm in northern New South Wales. A lot of good people there, and I found the people that I got to know there, they were a little higher quality than the people that I was hanging out with school. So I thought, what if I could make more of a life with people like this? So yeah, I was 14 and a half years old in 1998, and I decided I'm going to leave school and I'm going to move into an ashram, and it's one of the best things I ever did with my life. I was able to, I guess, learn about spirituality, learn about spiritual solutions for material problems. After a couple of years, I moved up from Melbourne Temple to Brisbane Temple. When I was 18, then moved to India for 4 years, where I was able to study yoga philosophy and get more in depth with the practices. I think a lot of people, they come to yoga first for probably physical and psychological, for those benefits. And then later on, they find spirituality if they're that way inclined. Yeah. For myself, it was the other way around.
It's interesting, yeah. So did you find answers to what you were sort of going through at the time? Obviously, you sort of had some benefit if you stayed, at it that long.
I think so. Yeah, I found what I was looking for spiritually. And then towards the end of the 8 years in the temple, I wanted to learn about a little bit more about myself as a man and explore my masculinity. And I guess growing up with a single mother and then moving into a temple, I was always in sort of like an asexual environment. And I felt like I had some masculine aspects that I wanted to explore within my psyche and just, explore the world a little bit more as well. So that's why I left the temple and just tried to, carry as much of the teaching forward into my life as I can.
Yeah. So when you sort of returned to, I suppose, normal society, normal life, what were sort of the biggest challenges you sort of found reassimilating back into that sort of environment?
I was 22 years old, never paid rent in my life. I had finished year 9 level of education while living in the ashram. So I was quite good at school at certain things, like they wanted to put me up a grade in mathematics and science I was pretty good at. And when I went to finish my high school certificate through TAFE, so through the technical college, it took about, I think it was about 15 months to finish that year 10, 11, and 12 equivalent through TAFE. And I found math a little bit more challenging. So the subjects that I was naturally gifted at in high school then became a little bit harder, but other skills like English and literature and philosophy were a lot more stronger. So it was like my strengths became my weaknesses and my weaknesses became the strengths because of that 9-year gap in mainstream education.
Yeah, interesting. And then obviously just, coming back to normal life, paying rent, sort of, I suppose you would have, sort of left that world quite young at like 14, and then coming back at being like an adult man would have been a bit of like a sort of change around you and the things you were experiencing and stuff. What did you sort of spend your time doing at that time? Were you doing a lot of yoga? Was that sort of what you were spending your time doing, or?
One of the first things I did was a yoga teacher training course. When I was living in the temple, a lot of the monks would ask me to teach them yoga, and I was very shy at the time, and I said no. I don't really want to teach yoga. This is just a practice for myself.
Yeah.
Within the temple, the spiritual practices are primary, and then there's like a few monks that get into yoga postures and things like that. So when when I graduated from the temple, I thought I can probably make some sort of, not necessarily a career as a yoga teacher, but I feel like this is something I'd like to do now. The first career aspiration that I had after graduating from the temple was actually to join the military, the army specifically. So bit of a change from monk to military.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up joining the Army Reserves also for 4 years, which was good training, but I didn't find not the sort of people that I wanted to hang out with in the daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, you got to explore a bit more of that sort of masculinity you were talking about as well. Probably a bit more of in a sort of male-dominant environment sort of thing for a while.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So what sort of made you want to start your studio? Was that sort of just literally just a love of yoga, or what was the sort of plan behind that?
When I started teaching yoga, I don't think I was very good. I taught for 6 months, then I thought, you know what, teaching isn't for me. I'm going to just have yoga as my own practice again. After a couple of years, I had a girlfriend who was a yoga teacher, and she basically forced me back into teaching yoga. And this time I took it a little bit more seriously. I put a lot more time into my preparation of the classes, and I try to build the community in the studio. And I got a lot better at teaching yoga, I guess, to the level now where I train other teachers. I've trained a lot of Brisbane's best yoga teachers, and as well as a lot of the up-and-coming teachers, some of the studio owners in Brisbane, as well as people that have moved to New Zealand and different parts of Australia. Yeah, so I was teaching for other studios as a yoga teacher, but I felt like I wanted to build community in a very specific way, and that was not aligned with the owners of that studio.
Yeah.
So yeah, just eventually sought to start up my own thing.
Yeah, nice.
Going to be starting a Jiu-Jitsu club soon, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing where people have, because I have a yoga studio, obviously I have the ability to run a business, and people would ask, why don't you run yoga classes, or why don't you start a Jiu-Jitsu club as well? And I said, no, yoga is something that I really love to teach now, and I love to train people up to become teachers as well. However, Jiu-Jitsu it's for me. Like I have goals. I want to reach certain levels. I want to do particularly well in competition. So if I was to get too much into coaching, that would probably take away from my own development and my own competition. But I feel differently. What happened when Corona hit, I bought mats for home, and then I invited a couple of friends over because I could legally have 2 friends over to train. And during Corona, I've been training as much, if not more, than I would in normal times. And now that I got the mats for home, I live at the yoga studio. And so basically I'm fully equipped. I've got the space, I've got the mats, I've got the set times, which I'm currently training every night. So when Corona is over, I'm just going to run classes every night of the week, mostly with myself, and then have a couple of blue belts teach some of the other classes, and just split my training between my gym and training with my coach.
Very cool. That's a good move, man. I was going to ask you as well about, obviously there's plenty of benefits between doing yoga for Jiu-Jitsu as well, but what have you found to be the main sort of reason someone should do yoga to complement their Jiu-Jitsu?
For me, the main benefit of Jiu-Jitsu and yoga going together is the longevity. I want to be doing Jiu-Jitsu for a very long time, perhaps for the rest of my life. I also want to compete, like at least until I'm 40 years old, quite actively. At least that's the plan at this stage. So being able to just have my body sorted, to have my breathing sorted, to have my mind in a fairly good place from, I guess, the internal practices of yoga and my practice on my mat, it's setting me up quite well for you know, a long life in jiu-jitsu. I combine yoga with physiotherapy every week. So I make sure that I get like manual rehab every week. You know, as a black belt, you know how broken up the body can get, and yeah, so the yoga and physiotherapy I just find really helps with longevity. Then of course there's the mental clarity for jiu-jitsu that comes from yoga. There's the flexibility, the mobility that is there as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, that physical element obviously helps quite a lot with certain positions, especially guard positions, I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. The joints have a little bit more bounce in them rather than just like a straight up break.
Yeah.
And same with the muscles, they're just more elastic, you know, in a Kimura, you know, a shoulder lock going either way. They like, I can feel when somebody Kimuras me, even past the end range, there's still that elasticity of the bounce. So there's a lot more buffer space before I actually get injured.
That's awesome, yeah. It's something I'd like to get more into, to be honest. I haven't done yoga in quite a long time, but I need to start again, just to like get some more, I suppose for me, more mobility and just, injury prevention as well is definitely a big one, like trying to compete actively and just pulling up sore and just, you know, like constant aches and pains. It's just good to be able to move freely without having to worry about those sort of, that very rough sort of end range sort of connections. That bounce you're talking about would be pretty handy.
Yeah. Yeah, yoga's so mainstream now that it's not only you can get a yoga place that's quite close to you, but you can sort of test out a few places and see what you like the most. As an athlete, you may prefer, like you may be putting 100% of your energy into jiu-jitsu, and so you may prefer yoga that is more relaxing and stretching. So where even if you've overtrained, you can do like a restorative yoga class, what we call Yin Yoga. That suits some jiu-jitsu athletes. Other jiu-jitsu athletes, they prefer to get their workout with yoga, like as one of their forms of conditioning. So like a power yoga class suits them better.
Yeah, I might try a few around me. There's, I think, 4 or 5 around here. I haven't really even gone in there yet, so I think I need to start doing some classes and just seeing, you know, once COVID's over, seeing what's around and what sort of suits. But yeah, you're right. It's like training so much jiu-jitsu and coaching as well. It's hard to fit it all in, but it sort of needs to become a priority now at this stage of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know how you go as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I'll definitely ask your advice and any tips and tricks and stuff once I check them out. But yeah, it seems to be one of those things that like the longer you're in the game, the more you realize it's important to do supplementary type stuff. You know, like diet becomes more important, your physical training becomes more important outside of jiu-jitsu. Obviously, your mental side of things as well, and then just balancing things a lot more. I see a lot of my younger students, they're like super physically fit and really strong and like even quite mentally strong, but they don't really have that that longevity in mind yet because they're still quite young. So it's one of those things where I want to sort of instill that in them, but at the same time I need to practice what I preach and do that to the best of my ability as well, and start to think about my long-term goals as well. I'm only 32, but like same sort of deal. I want to compete for a long time and train for a long time, so it's important to me to be able to do that. Something like yoga is probably going to be one of the best ways to ensure it's a possibility.
Do you compete in adult or masters?
Both, usually adult, depending on how many competitors there are. Some comps, if there's only because I mean at black belt, there's not a lot of adult black belts around. Most of them are in Masters 1. So sometimes I'll jump in Masters 1 for that reason, but ideally I compete in adult.
Right, so you'll actually get more roles in Masters 1 sometimes.
Usually, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very curious about what happens at black belt, like, because I've been a brown belt for 6 years, and so it's like I'm on that edge, and I've also got some, I guess, lofty competition goals as a brown belt. But just, yeah, I mean, like there's a clear progression of how each rank changes in jiu-jitsu, but at black belt, it's like at a certain level, that's what you are for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like in each rank, you know, you spend like, 10 odd years like excelling, trying to excel at a certain level and then get to the next level. But when you reach black belt, like what happens there?
Yeah, it's like open-ended, right? It's interesting. It's like, I guess the funny thing is at black belt, you can get someone who's a fresh black belt and you can get someone who's been a competitive black belt for 10 years. That's a huge disparity. But you're classified as the same thing. So competition can be pretty interesting in terms of the different levels. And it's one of the biggest ranks, I feel, where you see level disparities. That and white belt, you know, like a white belt, if you get someone who's like a 2-month white belt versus someone who's nearly a blue belt, that's going to be a huge disparity. But then at the other end of black belt, it's kind of like that as well. Someone who's new to black belt, where there is that little bit of a kick in pace and intensity, that can be like daunting when you first move into that sort of level, because you've got guys that are experienced, that are competing at that level for a long time. So I guess that change of pace is quite like confronting to begin with, but it's like any other rank in the sense that once you settle into it, it's sort of, it is what it is. It's not probably too different to brown belt really, once you settle into that little bit of a experience sort of difference. But I think that open-endedness is interesting. Like you get guys that have been competing at black belt for like 5-6 years and at the top of their game. It's going to be tough, you know what I mean? As a new black belt, yeah.
I've had an interesting relationship with competing at each level. So I guess I've been on each rank between like 1 to 6 years. Like I was a white belt for a year, blue belt for 3, purple belt for 3, and brown for 6 now. And I found each time I achieve a new rank, it's actually my first year at that rank that I do best in competition in terms of results. So it's like when I got to blue, purple, and then brown belt, like I won Australian championships in Pan Packs, you know, if not double golding at Pan Packs for the first year. But for some reason, like the second and the third year I've sometimes also won it in the following up years, but not always. But the first year I've always won at that level. Super strange. I think, I don't know, within my psychology, I function a little bit better as an underdog.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it probably most likely works better for you that way, yeah.
Something I want to explore, like the psychology of an underdog and how to optimize that, and also like, because I've been a brown belt for so long, in a sense, like I'm a favorite to win a competition. So how then do I shift my perspective to, you know, compete optimally in like a mental state, which isn't where I normally compete best. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I definitely feel you. Like it's one of those things where I've had a similar experience in the sense that probably not at black belt, but every other belt, where if you're not expected to win, or you're not the favorite, or if you're the underdog, there's no expectation on you. So you're more likely to roll a bit more freely and just do whatever you feel like doing. And you do your best jiu-jitsu in that sort of mindset a lot of the time, I feel. Like if you're in that flow state, you just sort of do what you would do in the gym. Whereas when you have the pressure on you, it's harder to emulate your true jiu-jitsu, because you're sort of thinking about the external expectations quite a lot, and that can play on your mind during the comp. Whereas at black belt, I feel like when I moved to black belt, I was sort of ready for that next level, and I was probably like middle of the pack to begin with. But at every other belt, I sort of felt no pressure to perform, I guess, in the first sort of year or so. Probably a similar thing to yourself that you're talking about, and that's where I was able to do well, probably because of more than anything that lack of pressure, just that lack of expectation.
How long have you been training for?
So I grew up doing judo and wrestling, and then I found jiu-jitsu at about 14 or 15 years old, and then I was doing a bunch of other styles at the same time. So then I was doing jiu-jitsu, but just sort of peripherally, not really that into it. And then it wasn't until 2009 I started training full-time, competing in jiu-jitsu. So since 2009, I would say I've been just doing jiu-jitsu and focusing on that, and nothing else. So yeah, grappling for a long time, jiu-jitsu as a sole sort of practice for around 11 years. Yeah.
Damn. So fortunate to have like these grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu for you pretty much your whole life, like since your teens. That's so lucky.
Yeah, my dad and his brothers did judo. So I sort of had a bit of a connection to grappling from a young age, and My dad had some judo trophies in his lounge room, so I was asking him about those, and then he sort of showed me a little bit, and I got introduced to the martial arts sort of that way. My mother did karate, so I had a bit of a connection from day one, which is pretty handy. And then I was doing a style called Zendo Kai, which you might be familiar with. Karate style has obviously got different elements in it, and there was a bit of grappling in that, and then
quite a hard style of karate, yeah. Like
yes, yeah.
Like very contact.
Yeah, when I tell people that I did karate for a long time, because Zendo Kai was the main style of karate that I did. I also did Shotokan and a couple other styles too. But when I say karate, Zendo Kai is, I would try and describe it as, it's more like Muay Thai with grappling and then a bit of wrestling. So the more you talk about it, it's like just doing MMA and a gi, really. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't a whole lot of karate to it apart from the katas. Like, yeah.
Japanese sambo or something.
Yeah, legit. But no, it was all good. Yeah. But it was all good. I mean, I learned lots of different stuff, but at the end of the day, I just fell in love with Jiu-Jitsu and competing in Jiu-Jitsu in particular. Also pretty passionate about coaching Jiu-Jitsu. So I think just I needed to dedicate my full time to Jiu-Jitsu. That's what I sort of did from about 2009, just because of that genuine, super strong attraction to it, you know.
Have you been to Brisbane before?
I have, yeah, a couple of times, yeah. I trained, this is going back to 2015, I think. I did Worlds in 2015 in the US, and then I stopped over in Brisbane because my dad actually lives in Brisbane. So I stopped over there for a couple of days, and I trained at Gracie on my tar there, but I haven't really looked around the scene or anything, and I don't really know the scene too well there. But I know there's quite a big scene in Queensland in general.
Pretty huge, yeah. Yeah, the one time I've been to Perth was, remember Nationals was in 2010?
Yep.
Yeah, the AFBJJ Australian Champions Cup. Yeah, I was at university, had no money. I literally used my credit card to book a flight over there, and like it was worth a trip. I was doing primarily MMA at that time, and I won in the gi. And I remember my coach Dan Higgins at the time. He said, "You won the wrong division."
Yeah, it's interesting for an MMA fighter to do well in the gi, especially like in comps like that.
Yeah. I lost the final against. Actually, I think I had, from memory, I think I had both the finals against Murat from Melbourne. I won the gi and he won the no gi, from memory.
Yeah, nice. Did you ever compete in MMA?
Yeah, I had 10 amateur fights. So on the outskirts of Brisbane, there's a place called Toowoomba, and there was a competition called Enemy on the Floor, which was C-class MMA on Jiu-Jitsu mats, basically.
Yeah.
And you had to eliminate the competition all the way to the final. So you'd have like three fights in one day. Couldn't punch to the head. You could kick to the head. Originally, you couldn't kick to the head, but then they changed the rules where you could kick to the head. Yeah. So I had 9 C-class fights at Enemy on the Floor, and then 1 fight in the cage at Aftershock. So all amateur. Yeah. 1 more than I lost. Submitted a lot of people with armbar. It's interesting. My first 3 MMA fights, I won by submission in the first round by armbar on the left arm. And I only realized it when I played the videos back.
It's killer.
Yeah, and had to do the cage fight. I think if you're training MMA, it's at a minimum got to do at least 1 cage fight. So
yeah, got to tick it off, right?
Yeah, I won that by a decision. It was a clear unanimous decision. But then that opponent, he then went pro and fought against one of my teammates that integrated at the time, who had a pro record of a bunch of fights, and knocked my teammate out viciously in 9 seconds.
Wow.
So I was like, damn, I'm glad I chose to grapple with this guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, like when you were training MMA and stuff, what was your sort of goal behind that? Was that going back to sort of what you were saying when you were younger, sort of feeling unsafe and that, and wanted to be more confident. Was that sort of the reasoning behind MMA, or was it sort of like, were you in love with MMA? Because I found for me, like, I trained MMA. I never competed in MMA, but I trained a bit of it. But I always found I was just way more attracted to Jiu-Jitsu. Is it the same for you, or how did you feel about it?
Well, I started in a Jiu-Jitsu gym, and then I started cross-training in MMA at a different gym. And not the coach, but the owner of my Jiu-Jitsu gym, he gave me an ultimatum to, if I want to train MMA, I have to leave the gym.
Wow.
I said, but they're two different sports. And he said, but they're really closely aligned. So you have to choose between Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. And I said, well, I want to do MMA. I also want to be here, but if you're giving me an ultimatum, see you later. So I went over to Integrated and trained there for 4.5 years with Dan Higgins, primarily. And I think I wanted to train and fight in MMA because I saw it as more of a complete martial art.
Mm-hmm.
So from like, I guess an intellectual level, that's how I viewed it. But I was always the grappling worm in the MMA gym.
Yeah.
So, you know, everybody tried to throw me down to the ground and I'd pull them into guard and that'd frustrate them. And I quite often would have an advantage because I would focus on the grappling over the striking. Striking wasn't fun. I used to get beat up a lot in school and at home. So to this day, if I get hit in the head, I get quite triggered.
Yeah.
And I think that's to be honest, that's primarily why I quit MMA, because it just I find it's not good for my mind. Like when I get hit, it just it brings all that stuff back to the surface. Mm-hmm. And even though I've done a lot of work to address that stuff, I just find MMA was something that I wanted to do, but when I was doing it, didn't enjoy it as much as Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas you can put me on the Jiu-Jitsu mat six days a week and I'm happy. But if I have to spar and stand in the pocket and trade with somebody and, you know, kickboxing or MMA, it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah, you don't leave the session feeling as good about the training, hey? It kind of sucks.
Yeah. Similar experience.
Yeah. Jiu-Jitsu, you can just train super hard, and even if you have really hard rolls and get smashed, you still walk out feeling amazing for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah. So tell me about India. So you obviously lived there for a while, and what was that like?
India was amazing. So moving there when I was 18 years old, I had no responsibility, so I had freedom to... I didn't travel a lot of India. I lived initially in one place called Vrindavan, which is in North India. It's also the birthplace of Krishna. It's near the Rajasthan desert, so it gets very hot in summer. It's actually 30 minutes drive from a place called Govardhan, which is, at least at one stage, the hottest inhabited place on earth. So you're talking about a place that is almost 50 degrees Celsius. And part of what makes it so hot is there's a 7-kilometer rock mountain, and there's a 7-kilometer, sorry, just one sec. The key's on the countertop in reception. People are in the yoga studio.
All right.
So there's a 7-kilometer rock mountain called Govardhan. So you've got the beating sun right next to the Rajasthan desert, and that's amplifying into this mountain. And so you've got the heat of the sun, and then you've got the heat of the rock emanating back onto you as well. So in the daytime, it's basically double as hot. And then in the nighttime, it's still scorching hot because rock holds a lot of heat. It's a pretty interesting place to live. Lived there for 2 years and then moved to a place on the Ganges River in West Bengal called Mayapur, where was mostly studying yoga philosophy there for the year, and then moved to a different temple in Mumbai. It was considered one of the role model temples for the world. So I wanted to experience, I guess, life in that temple. They had a very interesting system that to renounce everything and become a monk, you had to have at least a bachelor degree with at least 2 years work experience in your field. And then people who didn't have degrees and working experience would send out to this more rural satellite centers.
Yep.
So as a result, they ended up, this place called Chalpati Temple, they ended up with this very smart bunch of monks. So sort of very together people, not people that are materially dysfunctional, that are dropping out of the world, but people who are very together, spiritually inquisitive, and they still want to become a monk.
That's super interesting criteria for that sort of environment. That's that would be a very unique place in the world, I imagine.
It's pretty unique, yeah. And I guess like the spiritual teachings of the monks, the teachers and the preachers, when they travel around to different parts of the world, they've got quite a big influence globally as well. The people that have come from this temple.
In terms of yoga philosophy, what have you what has sort of become your big revelations? What have you sort of discovered through what you've learned, and what's your main sort of takeaways from everything you've learned?
It's a good question. For me personally, and the approach that I take to yoga, it's about dredging stuff up so that we can get clear and get free of stuff. So I'm very much into overcoming trauma through facing it, so that emotional issues, mental issues, mood issues become much less of a problem. So my approach personally is to, how can we look through the practice of yoga and these introspective practices, how can we look at what is causing stress, what is causing anxiety, what is causing depression, actually bring these things up to the surface and start to heal things from there.
Do you find people that come into your studio, they sort of find it quite therapeutic if they have those sort of things going on?
Yeah, I had a yoga student and she hung back after a yoga class one day and she said, I have depression. Can you recommend any particular yoga for mental health? And I said, yoga is all mental health. Like it is actually primarily mental health, but with the veneer of yoga postures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get people in with, look at these cool postures. Let's do this. You can do a handstand. You can do a headstand. You can learn how to do the splits. But this is marketing. Of course it has the physical benefits, but ultimately the benefits are to our mood, to our mind, to our emotions.
What's the sort of average person that comes into your studio? What do you think their primary motivator is usually when they come in?
It's usually body and mind. So some people are more motivated by physical aspects, like they want to have a good looking body, is a big one. And then people want to de-stress also. Like they've heard that yoga is good for the mind. They might be experiencing stress or anxiety. And so they come in for these reasons. They're fine.
Interesting. With your academy as well, your studio, when you're adding that element of the academy to it as well, do you think you'll get people trying Jiu-Jitsu from your yoga sort of group?
I'm really curious to find out who I attract.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a large database of people who have been to the yoga studio. So letting people know in advance that, in a month or two, we're going to be starting Jiu-Jitsu, and self-defense classes here, and having like a whole new big fresh batch of people starting all at the same time. And then I guess using my network through got a decent network on Facebook and Instagram. So, you know, people starting for the first time. But then I also want to make sure that I get adequate training in, and I want to do some high level training as well, and see people get to where they want to go with their jiu-jitsu.
It's always the balance, so, trying to do both.
Yeah. So I'm personally curious to see who I attract, whether it's more new people or whether like actually get some good talent in.
Mm-hmm. In terms of competition this year, I mean, it's probably pretty hard to say, but do you have plans for competition later this year? Anything with Jiu-Jitsu? Pan Packs maybe or something?
Well, the big goal for this year is No-Gi Worlds in December.
Nice.
That's going to happen in LA.
Yep.
That's basically the focus of the whole year. So I have increased my no-gi training. I've also increased my gi training. So at the moment during Corona, I'm doing about 3 gi sessions a week, 3 no-gi sessions a week.
Mm-hmm.
Because concurrently, I want to get to. I found myself uncomfortable within the gi. So as soon as training's over, I'd take off the gi. If it's a hot day, in between rounds, I try to like loosen the gi or take the gi off. And I realized like part of jiu-jitsu and part of becoming a black belt is really respecting the gi. So I make sure it's a little bit easier now that we're getting cooler, just in between rounds, like properly tuck in the gi and do the belt back up. And then after training, I try to keep the gi on for a while, just to get more comfortable with it.
Or at home.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what your experience or other people's experience of wearing the gi is, like whether you're just completely comfortable in it or whether it feels a little bit restricting.
I think it's quite related to how often you train no-gi, I think. The more you train no-gi, people tend to, I feel they tend to not like the restrictiveness of the gi. It's one of those things too, the more time you spend in it, I guess. For me, it's like I feel more at home in the gi because I can control you more than you can control me. But people that sort of train a lot of no-gi, they get used to moving fast and freely, and the gi is quite restrictive in that sense, I suppose. They're very different styles in a way, you know. It's the same thing, but also so different.
Yeah.
Is your style similar no-gi to gi, or?
Mostly, but then of course there's some difference, probably like 80% the same, 20% difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the specificity of grips or not having the grips.
Yep.
So the big goal for me this year in competition is to win No-Gi Worlds at Brown Belt Masters 2.
That'd be a really good way to go into black belt.
Bloody oath. I honestly think I've got a 50 to 60% chance of winning this year. Mm-hmm. And if I don't, I might ask my coach to, you know, I might say, I want to have another crack at this competition at this level next year. Mm-hmm. I've competed at Worlds twice before. So 2016 Gi Worlds over at Long Beach in California. So in the first round, I faced up against Servio Tullio, who he was in ADCC. He was in the most recent ADCC, and so I was definitely outclassed in that match. And yeah, he submitted me after 2 minutes. The second time I competed at Worlds was No-Gi Worlds in December in LA. I researched all of my opponents. I watched all of their tape, and they seemed fairly predictable, put it that way. I could see the patterns, and at least by watching the matches, I knew I could beat all of them. The mistake I took going into the first round was a little bit about overconfidence. So I had 2 advantages early in the first round. And then I thought I would just play it safe and ride out the first round because it's just the first round. Then when the time was up, I looked over at the scoreboard and somehow hit accrued pitches. So that was pretty devastating to come away and lose in the first round. But going into 2020 December, I guess I'm just taking a lot more time to prepare, specifically like literally a full year to prepare for this competition.
Yeah.
And I just think of that on a daily basis. How would a world champion train? How would they behave? How would they think? How does a black belt think? How do they behave? What do they do on a daily basis? So yeah, just training as much as I can, 6 times a week. During Corona, when everything gets back to normal, like it's strange. Like I'm training almost exclusively with blue belts at the moment, and we're all getting a lot out of our training. I feel like I'm training the best I ever have at the moment. Yeah. Well, also, I mean, if everything goes according to plan, if Corona doesn't push everything back further, ADCC trials is at the beginning of December. I think
Singapore?
The first weekend. Singapore, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the weekend after is Nogi Worlds in LA. I don't have expectations of winning trials in Singapore. It'll be the first time doing trials, but definitely want to go over it. I've been developing a heel hook game a lot over the last year or so. So just using that as a warm up and with no expectations, then going into LA and yeah, try to win worlds at this level. I think if I am ever going to win a competition at a world level, this is my best chance this year and next year while I'm still brown.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. What are your competition goals? You're obviously very active.
Well, yeah, a bit hard to say at the moment, but I was hoping to do Singapore. Just depends on how things go, I guess. And I run my academy as well. Sorry?
What weight are you?
I'm hoping to do, well, it's an interesting question. I compete at all different weights. I actually change my weight class quite frequently, but I'm hoping to be about 85 kilos, around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walk around at about 88 at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Drop it down a little bit.
But maybe Pan Packs as well, just sort of see how things go. But I also run my academy like full time, so it's just a bit of the balance between coaching and training, like you were saying, same sort of thing.
Yeah. That'll put us in the same weight division.
Is that where you are? Is it as well?
Well, I'm low 80s.
Yep.
I think my days of cutting to 79 kilos are over. And then 77 for ADCC is probably just a bit much.
Yep.
I guess with 24 hours, it's not so bad. So it's sort of like I'm right in the middle of 77 and 88 for ADCC trials. And for IBJJF, yeah, I just feel more comfortable at 85 now.
Yep. That's what it comes down to eventually, hey? Like some people, I think early in your career, you just cut as much weight as you can and get as light as you can, but at some point you realize there's actually an optimal position for your body to be in, and it might not be your lightest possible body weight. In fact, it's probably not like the best idea a lot of the time to cut a bunch of weight.
What's the biggest weight cut you've ever done? 6 kilos. When I was quite young as well, and that was for wrestling. I can't remember what I was actually weighing at the time, but it was a huge cut. It started probably 3 weeks out, where I cut my food down quite a lot and then water. So that was pretty savage. Yeah. Did 7 kilos in less than 24 hours once.
Jesus.
That was pretty brutal.
What was that for?
That was for, I fought at lightweight, so I fought at 70 kilos for my last MMA fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then rehydrated back up to 77 kilos. So I was, comparatively big.
So you had 24 hours?
Yeah, the weigh-in was like 6 p.m.
Yep.
So I went to sleep at 77 kilos. Slept in basically like a ski outfit, and a hoodie like, Kenny from South Park. Dropped about 1.5 kilos from sleeping, then went and did a hot yoga class, dropped another like 1.5 kilos from that. And then there's this product called Albaline. It's like a Vaseline like substance. You rub it all over your body. It's actually, it's women's makeup remover. They put it on their face to get the skin pores open so they can just take their makeup off easily. But MMA fighters use it to rub their whole body from head to toe with it. Opens up your skin pores, so once you start sweating, you literally keep on sweating. So instead of having to run off all the extra weight or sit in the sauna to shred all the extra weight, you just go for a little bit of a jog until you start sweating, you're rugged up, and then you can just like literally just lay on the grass in the park and just sweat the rest of it out.
How did you perform? Did you feel good?
From that much of a weight cut? Definitely had an effect, but having the size difference of an extra 10% body weight, I think made up for
it was worth it. Yeah.
Slight loss of cardio.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely worth it.
It's just an equation
Jiu-Jitsu,
the way up.
Yeah, exactly. Jiu-Jitsu, I only ever cut like 1 to 3 kilos when necessary.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting under, so it's no problem. I can just walk in and weigh.
It's a better way to be, I think, in Jiu-Jitsu anyway.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's been super good to have you on. Been real interesting actually, because I didn't know much about you, so I actually didn't want to talk to you too much before I did this because I didn't want to know like too much. So it worked out quite well. It's been really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure like when we'd start the podcast, are we going to do like a sound check and a video check and have a little small talk first, or was it going to be straight into it? I was like, whoa, cool.
Yeah. I always find it's better to jump straight in. It's more like organic and natural. But yeah, I'll definitely be hitting you up for some advice on yoga studios when I check them out and stuff. And I'll be keeping an eye on your movements and stuff with competition and that. And I wish you all the best for December.
I really look forward to doing another trip to Perth, and I'll come hang out with you and train.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah. More than welcome to come down to the academy and train and hang out and stuff. It'd be awesome.
That'd be unreal.
Killer, man. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Take it easy, bro.